Obsession and unhealthy attachment can lead to horrific acts. Stalkers often focus on the object of their obsession or their loved ones, finding satisfaction in the suffering of the person who rejected them. But sometimes criminals are willing to go to extremes, ruthlessly destroying anyone who stands in the way of their goal. The small Swedish town of Arboga, located 160 kilometers west of Stockholm, became the site of one of the most horrific crimes in the country's history in 2008. On March 17, 2008, 23-year-old Emma Jangestig, mother of 3-year-old Max and 1.5-year-old Saga, was spending a typical evening with her children. She was preparing dinner, waiting for her fiancé Torgny Hellberg to return from work. Emma and Torgny had met a year earlier after her divorce. Their relationship developed rapidly, and they quickly realized they couldn't live without each other. The couple even bought a house together, moving in just 2 months before the tragic events. Although Torgny was not Max and Saga's biological father, he treated them as his own. Nicholas, the children's biological father, continued to actively participate in their lives. He had a somewhat strained relationship with his ex-wife but communicated with the kids almost daily. On that fateful evening, around 6 p.m., Emma and the children sat down for dinner. Torgny was still at work and wasn't expected to return for a few hours. Taking advantage of the free time, Emma decided to send messages to family and friends. She was exchanging messages with her sister, who received the last message from her at 7:07 p.m. Suddenly, their conversation was cut short mid-sentence. Emma stopped reading and responding to messages, which her sister found strange. She decided to contact Torgny and tell him about Emma's odd behavior. It turned out that he had left work a bit earlier and was already on his way home. He promised Emma's sister that he would check on the situation. Torgny arrived at the doorstep at 7:17 p.m. Everything seemed normal from the outside, but he was alarmed by the open front door, which was usually always locked. As he crossed the threshold, he found himself in the epicenter of a horrific scene. The hallway was in chaos. Items were strewn across the floor, furniture was broken and overturned. At first, Torgny thought the children had simply gotten out of control during play, although the extent of the destruction seemed too serious for childish mischief. He called out his wife and children's names, but no one answered. Suddenly, at the end of the hallway, he noticed a motionless figure on the floor. As he approached, he froze in horror. Before him lay the mutilated body of a child in an unnatural position. The face and head were so badly crushed that Torgny couldn't recognize who it was. But from the clothing, he guessed it was little Saga. A bit further lay Emma, also in a pool of blood with similarly horrific injuries. Without wasting a minute, Torgny called the emergency services. The emergency dispatcher received an alarming call at 7:20 p.m. On the other end of the line, a man was screaming in despair, begging for help. He reported that someone had brutally attacked his family while he was away. In the background, a woman's moan could be heard. It was Emma. Without hesitation, the dispatcher sent police and an ambulance to the address. Medics arrived at the scene within minutes. By that time, Torg had discovered that all 3 of his family members had suffered severe head injuries, their faces mutilated beyond recognition. Amazingly, however, the doctors found that the attack victims were still showing signs of life. Despite this, the prognosis was grim from the very beginning. Even a superficial examination indicated such serious damage that the medics feared the worst. The victims were urgently transported to the hospital for emergency care. Max and Saga were in critical condition, while Emma was somewhat less injured. She was immediately placed in intensive care and put into a medically induced coma. The doctors held out little hope. Even if the mother and children survived, the traumatic brain injuries would likely have irreversible consequences. Despite the pessimistic prognosis, the medical staff gave their all to save the lives of the victims. Meanwhile, forensic experts were already working at the scene of the terrible tragedy. The picture resembled a horrific scene from a horror movie. The area was cordoned off as the entire house, which was in chaos, needed to be thoroughly examined. Unfortunately, the medics inadvertently trampled and destroyed numerous traces while trying to save lives and evacuate the victims. Many items had to be moved to reach the victims. Essentially, the crime scene was significantly damaged, which could hinder the collection of evidence. It was obvious that the attack occurred within a time frame of no more than 13 minutes, between the last message Emma's sister received from her at 7:07 p.m. and Tourney's call to the emergency services at 7:20 p.m. Of course, from the very beginning, Emma's husband became the main suspect. However, he had a solid alibi. His presence at work was confirmed, and surveillance cameras captured him on his way home. When Tourney was cleared of all suspicion, investigators were able to narrow down the time frame. It became clear that the attacker had only 10 minutes, from 7:07 to 7:17 p.m., when Tourney entered the house and found the injured. Although Tourney was no longer considered a suspect, the police decided to interrogate him at the station. Investigators hoped he might have noticed or heard something that could assist in the investigation. However, the man insisted that he had not seen any strangers or vehicles. The only suspicious detail was the unlocked front door. Next, detectives considered the possible involvement of Emma's ex-husband. Nicholas seemed a plausible suspect. According to Tourney, there had been long-standing conflicts between Emma and her ex-husband regarding communication with the children, division of property, and alimony. Sometimes the situation escalated to such an extent that the woman even filed reports with the police, fearing for her safety. However, this was a long time ago. Well before the tragedy, the former spouses had settled their disputes and reached an agreement. Tourney even maintained quite friendly relations with Nicholas, with no misunderstandings or motives for attack arising between them. Emma's husband did not believe her ex-husband was involved, but there were no other leads at the time. After the interrogation, Emma's father picked up his son-in-law from the police station. Together, they headed to the hospital to find out about the condition of the victims. On the way, the men turned on the radio, and the first news they came across was a report about the brutal attack. The announcer declared that the children had died in the hospital, never regaining consciousness, just minutes earlier. Emma's fate remained unknown. This news stunned the men, who couldn't believe such a horror had befallen their family. It was impossible to imagine who could so coldly attack a defenseless woman and innocent children, brutally taking their lives. Meanwhile, law enforcement officers worked tirelessly at the scene of the tragedy, gathering any leads piece by piece. One thing became clear: the perpetrator belonged to the victim's innermost circle. This was evidenced by the extreme brutality of the attack, the clear intention to leave no chance of survival, especially the fury with which the children were tortured. There was undoubtedly a personal motive behind this. Whoever this monster was, he harbored intense hatred for his victims, completely losing control of himself during the killing and inflicting numerous blows. At that point, Emma's ex-husband remained the main suspect. There had been conflicts and disputes between him and the woman in the past. Nicholas had even threatened her, which led Emma to turn to law enforcement. So the man was immediately arrested and taken in for questioning. From the very beginning, Nicholas was shocked by the terrible event. However, during the interrogation, he remained quite calm. The father of the dead children had an alibi. At the time of the attack, he was in another city. Although this information still needed to be verified, Nicholas's behavior indicated that he was not the killer. The police's only hope was 23-year-old Emma, who was desperately fighting for her life in a hospital bed. If she managed to survive, she could become an invaluable witness for the investigation and provide crucial information about the attacker's identity. Added to the suffering endured by the victim's family was the fear that the criminal might return to finish what he started and take Emma's life after all. To protect the woman, security was posted around the clock right by her hospital room. The doctor's prognosis remained bleak. Emma was in critical condition. The medical staff expressed concerns that even if the woman survived, she would likely remain disabled for life and possibly be unable to recall details of the attack. No other witnesses to the crime could be found. Neighbors had neither heard nor seen anything. So law enforcement focused on studying footage from surveillance cameras in the area. They hoped this would help track the attacker's movements and determine where he came from. It was also crucial to find the murder weapon, which could bear traces of the perpetrator. That's why patrol officers searched the surrounding area particularly thoroughly. Even service dogs were involved. Unfortunately, This did not yield the desired results. The forensic expert determined that a heavy object with crushing force, similar to a hammer or other such tool, was used in the attack on the children. The blows were delivered with extreme rage, resulting in the toddlers' skulls being completely shattered. Each child suffered numerous injuries, indicating the attacker's uncontrollable emotions and frenzy. This detail could be an important clue, but no one from the family's close circle, including Torg himself, could imagine who would be capable of such cruelty. The young couple had no ties to the criminal world, had no enemies, and was known for their decency. Investigators' suspicions about a personal motive were quickly confirmed. No valuables were stolen from the crime scene. Money and jewelry remained untouched, ruling out robbery. The forensic examination of the scene was completed the day after the tragedy. By that time, Nicholas had already been excluded from the list of suspects, as his alibi was confirmed, and the man was released. Emma was still in a medically induced coma, and the investigation was not progressing. The case gained considerable attention in the media. Not only did the fact that the crime occurred in a low-crime area draw attention, but the choice of victims and the degree of brutality were shocking. Law enforcement appealed to the public through the media for assistance. It worked. People living near the victim's house came forward. One passerby reported seeing a person in black clothing with a hood pulled over their head on the porch of the house around 7 p.m. The individual seemed to be hesitating about whether to go inside. About 10 minutes later, the same witness, returning from the store, noticed the suspicious guest of slender build in black running out of the residence, jumping into a car and speeding away. Unfortunately, the eyewitness did not get a good look at the face and could not describe the vehicle in detail, but he got the impression that it was a woman. After this testimony, several more people came forward, providing a similar description of a person loitering aimlessly in the neighborhood before the attack. It became clear that this stranger in black was the perpetrator. Soon after, Torny came to the station and told the police about his ex-girlfriend. The man shared his concerns about her, as she had been behaving inappropriately lately. He was referring to 31-year-old Christine Schurer from Hanover, Germany. When Christine was 11, her father left the family. From then on, she had little contact with him. She went on an exchange program to New York, where she lived with relatives in Manhattan. After returning to Germany, the girl settled in Göttingen and studied history for the next 6 years. Then Christine went to Greece, where she participated in archaeological excavations. While in Athens, she got a job at a hotel while also working as a historian. Later, the girl moved to the island of Crete, where she also started working in the hotel business. In August 2006, 26-year-old Torny went on vacation to Crete and checked into the hotel where Christine worked. On the very first day of his stay, the young man met the girl, and a romance blossomed between them. The relationship lasted throughout the 5-day vacation, and after Torny returned home, the lovers continued to correspond. Later, the enchanted Christine even flew to Sweden to spend a few days with her chosen one. Before leaving, the girl suggested going skiing together next time, but Torny did not show much enthusiasm. According to the man, it was then that he began to doubt the advisability of this relationship. In everyday life, Christine turned out to be completely different from how she was during the vacation. In January, Torny sent Christine a message informing her about the breakup. However, the girl could not simply accept this decision and tried in every way to restore the relationship. She constantly wrote to her ex-boyfriend, begging him to change his mind and give their romance a second chance. In March 2007, Christine came to Sweden again, this time for 2 weeks. During this visit, she managed to persuade Torny to go to dinner with her. The young man agreed, but at the meeting, he repeatedly emphasized that only a friendship was possible between them. Christine seemingly accepted this and left, but sometime later she returned to Sweden and insisted on another meeting. She believed that this dinner together should be the last and put a final end to their relationship. During the meeting, the girl suggested trying again, but Torny categorically refused, considering the matter settled once and for all. Then Christine stated that since they could no longer have a relationship, She would like to come to his place and pick up her belongings that she had left behind after her previous visit. Torgny agreed. It was a short visit, after which the girl left. However, the very next day, Christine called again, pleading for help. She said that she had stopped near some castle and could not find her way back. Torgny came to the rescue, and when he found the annoying ex-girlfriend, she confessed that the previous evening she had taken a large dose of medication, intending to voluntarily end her life because of the breakup. Out of compassion, the young man allowed her to stay the night, but before that, he contacted the girl's relatives in Germany. He informed them that Christine was having problems and asked them to take care of her after her return, to place her in a psychiatric hospital. Torgny was convinced that his ex-girlfriend needed professional help. The young man hoped that treatment would help solve all the problems associated with Christine's obsessive behavior. Moreover, being in the clinic should keep her away and not allow her to bother him anymore. Indeed, the girl was admitted to a psychiatric facility for 3 weeks. Unfortunately, even this did not stop the stalker. In the summer of 2007, she came to Stockholm with the intention of staying for a long time. Christine met a Swedish woman and rented an apartment with her. At the same time, the girl started looking for a job. It is known that in January 2008, she briefly flew to Germany, but already on February 20th, she returned to Sweden. Shortly after her return, Christine told her ex-boyfriend shocking news. She had given birth to a son by him. At the same time, the girl admitted that she had given the baby up for adoption to another family, explaining this by her own mental health problems. Torgny was stunned by what he heard, as he had not even suspected his ex-girlfriend's pregnancy, and the time frames did not match. When he asked about the date of birth, Christine replied, "Why do you need to know? In my opinion, this is not such an important detail." This answer aroused Torgny's suspicions, and he inquired why she had given the child away. Christine tried to manipulate the feelings of the object of her obsession, stating that after breaking up with him, she would not have been able to raise her son anyway, as the baby would constantly remind her of the pain Torgny had caused her. Christine said that she had recently gone to Germany on business, and it turned out that their child together was suffering from some hereditary blood disease. According to her, if the doctor's fears were confirmed, the adoptive parents intended to contact Torgny to discuss this problem. The man was extremely surprised by what he heard. At that time, Torgny was already in a serious relationship with Emma. They were living together with her children, and in January 2008, they moved to a new house. His new life partner knew about the problems with the stalker and the story about the birth. Emma also did not believe this story and asked a logical question: in which hospital was the boy born? She wanted to verify this information to avoid potential trouble in the future. However, Christine could not provide a clear answer to this question, which only heightened suspicions about her dishonesty. Sometime later, Torgny received a call from a stranger who introduced himself as the adoptive father of the boy in question. He confirmed Christine's words and advised the biological father to contact her, explaining that the child's biological mother was in an unstable mental state. Allegedly, they both urgently needed to go to Germany to resolve issues related to the baby. This whole story sounded extremely implausible. Torgny assumed that it was someone from Christine's acquaintances who had called him at her request, trying to bring them together in this way. At this point, both Torgny and Emma were convinced that the story about the child's birth was complete fiction, as Christine had not provided any evidence of the boy's existence. So the man, tired of the constant harassment, turned to the police with a request to influence his inadequate ex-girlfriend. Law enforcement officers visited the apartment that Christine was renting with her acquaintance. However, at the time of their arrival, the neighbor informed them that Christine had left for Germany the day before. The detectives checked the information and found out that Torgny had indeed previously sought their help, but the police had been unable to do anything. Investigators began considering the possibility of Christine's involvement in the murder. They managed to confirm that the girl was obsessed with her former partner and was in Arboga on the day of the crime, leaving for Germany immediately afterward, which only heightened suspicions about her. To overcome the difficulties that arose during the investigation, the Swedish police had to establish cooperation with their German colleagues. A number of facts testified against Christine. On March 20th, an arrest warrant was issued for her. The media instantly spread the news that the alleged killer had been identified and was in Hanover. It was at this time that Christine's mother and brother saw the news on television and immediately called the police. The woman inquired about the reason her daughter was wanted. The detectives informed her that Christine was suspected of committing a brutal attack. The girl's mother was shocked by what she heard and refused to believe her own ears. Soon, Christine herself contacted the police and stated that there had been some mistake and that she had nothing to do with it. Despite this, she was still arrested. Immediately after the first interrogations, she demanded to speak with a lawyer. The defense attorney quickly found out that the arrest warrant contained an error, so law enforcement officers were forced to release the suspect. But just 24 hours later, the Swedish police received a new corrected warrant. This allowed them to rearrest Christine on March 29th. The detainee remained calm and insisted on her non-involvement in the crime. Meanwhile, thorough searches were conducted in the apartment rented by Christine. Her mobile phone, laptop, and the clothes she claimed to have been wearing on the day of the murder were seized. Christine stated that she was dressed in a beige jacket. 2 jackets of that color were found in her dwelling, but no traces of blood were detected on either of them. It seemed that the suspect was lying, as witnesses had seen her in a black jacket. During the search of Christine's apartment, a black jacket was indeed found, but it had been thoroughly washed and had no traces of blood on it. Perhaps it was different clothing. The search queries on Christine's laptop aroused the greatest interest among investigators. They discovered numerous photographs of Emma and her children, as well as a plan of the house where the family lived. It was obvious that the suspect was preparing to commit the crime in this way. In addition, shortly before the bloody massacre, Christine had been searching the internet for information on ways to conceal traces of a crime. It was also found that she continuously monitored her ex-boyfriend's social media page. All this indicated an extreme degree of obsession with Torgny. This was further confirmed by the entries found in Christine's diary, where she detailed information about the victims, including their address and even some habits. At this point, Emma's condition had somewhat improved compared to how she was before. However, the doctors still could not give any guarantees regarding her survival. It remained unclear what consequences the injuries sustained by the woman might have. The medical staff planned to bring Emma out of the coma on March 27. Loved ones waited for news with bated breath. The process of bringing the woman out of the coma lasted for long hours, and the family did not know what to expect. Upon waking up, Emma could not say anything, but it was noticeable that she recognized the people around her. This gave hope for her recovery, and loved ones breathed a sigh of relief. The police immediately began preparing for an extremely important interrogation, which was to take place as soon as Emma could speak clearly. When communicating with the victim, the police had to exercise particular caution. They were strictly forbidden from informing Emma about the tragic fate of her children, even if she directly asked about it. Instead, the investigators had to give evasive answers so as not to worsen the already fragile condition of the woman who was lucky to survive. This strategy was meant to ensure that during the conversation with the detectives, Emma would provide clearer and more accurate testimony, and the traumatic information would not affect the reliability of her words. The first visit by investigators took place on April 1st, just 3 days after Emma was brought out of the medically induced coma. Despite the efforts of the police officers, the woman could not remember anything. She did not even understand why representatives of law enforcement had come to see her, did not know what had happened to her, or why she was in the hospital. The medical staff hoped that over time, the memory of the events of that fatal evening would return to Emma. The woman asked about her children more and more often, so the doctors decided that hiding this information from her would be too cruel. That same evening after the first interrogation, a doctor spoke with Emma. He told her about the attack that had occurred, but without unnecessary details. Immediately after this short conversation, the woman simply fell asleep. The next morning it turned out that she did not remember anything the doctor had told her. This state persisted for several weeks after. Given the patient's mental state, the medical staff decided to continue evading direct answers to questions about the children. In addition, Emma was forbidden from reading newspapers and watching television. This caused irritation in the woman, as she simply could not understand what was going on around her. Emma did not realize that her children had died. She continued to talk about them as if they were alive, despite being told several times about the death of her son and daughter. Eventually, the doctors decided to act more persistently. After another conversation, it finally dawned on the woman that she would never see her children again. However, Emma still did not remember exactly what had happened, so she was convinced that she had been in a serious car accident. At this stage, the forensic experts prepared a report based on the results of a thorough analysis of the crime scene. Unfortunately, all traces were either trampled by the medics, or Christine's attempts to carefully prepare for the murder proved to be remarkably effective. Not a single sample of her DNA or fingerprints was found in the house. Moreover, the murder weapon could not be found either. Christine's roommate told detectives that a hammer had disappeared from her toolbox in March. The description matched the alleged murder weapon. This happened just before the attack, which became circumstantial evidence of Christine's involvement in the crime for the police. In the absence of strong evidence to bring charges, the investigation continued. The detectives focused on studying the shoe prints found at the scene of the children's murder. Unfortunately, in this case, dozens of other traces left by paramedics, all three attack victims, and Emma's partner had to be discarded. Among the many prints, traces of sneakers were isolated, which did not belong to either the residents of the house or the rescuers who arrived at the call. The detectives managed to establish the brand, model, and size of this footwear, but Christine denied ever wearing such sneakers. However, a thorough analysis of her social media photos allowed these claims to be refuted. A picture was found on the suspect's page where she was wearing those very sneakers. The shoe size matched. However, even this evidence was circumstantial. The evidence also included footage from surveillance cameras at the train station, which recorded Christine arriving in the city at least 3 times during the last week before the attack, wearing a dark jacket. The last time this happened was on the day of the murder, March 17th. Unfortunately, the images were not clear enough, but the suspect's mobile phone geolocation confirmed her presence in the city. When asked about this by investigators, Christine could not provide a comprehensible explanation. Later, the girl claimed that she had come on business. The only aspect that the police had no problems with was the motive for the attack. According to the records found on Christine's computer, she was madly jealous of Tourny because of Emma. The girl simply could not accept that her former lover had found happiness with another woman. A psychiatric examination was ordered, the results of which found the suspect to be of sound mind. Law enforcement officers continued to make every effort to ensure that the miraculously surviving victim could remember something. For this, Emma was even taken to the crime scene. But this also did not yield results. Suddenly, a few days later, there was a breakthrough. The woman suddenly remembered that on the evening of March 17th, someone had knocked on the door. The mistress of the house opened it and saw a girl in dark clothes with a hood on her head standing on the threshold. The stranger introduced herself as Tina, and then she suddenly hit Emma on the head with something heavy. After that, the woman lost consciousness. It is horrifying to even imagine what happened next in the house and what the defenseless children had to endure. On July 29, 2008, Christine found herself in the dock in a Swedish court. She was accused of committing 2 premeditated murders and attempted murder. The defense showed considerable optimism, as the lawyers considered all the evidence against their client to be circumstantial and easily refutable. Christine's behavior when entering the courtroom seemed rather strange. She waved her hand in a friendly manner to most of those present, smiling inappropriately and laughing when the murder of the children was mentioned. Such behavior played into the hands of the prosecution, as it demonstrated the accused's cruelty and inadequacy. Christine continued to insist that her visit to Arboga was related exclusively to work matters. Allegedly, she was going to go on an archaeological excavation near the city. In contrast, the prosecutors argued that on that day, Christine had come to Arboga with a single purpose: to commit murder. And before that, she had come there twice, on March 12 and 14, to monitor her future victims. The prosecution also emphasized that Christine was a pathological liar, obsessed with her former partner. No evidence was ever found that Christine had ever been pregnant or given birth to a child. No one from her circle had noticed any signs of pregnancy, and no maternity hospital had recorded information about the birth or adoption. The pregnancy timeframes that the accused spoke about did not match reality. Christine's story about giving birth to Torgny's child did not stand up to any criticism, which characterized the defendant extremely negatively. The key witness for the prosecution was Emma herself. Already on the first day of the court hearings, she recognized the defendant as the same Tina. The woman recalled opening the door to the killer about 10 minutes before Torgny returned from work. Upon seeing the murderer of her children face to face, Emma was so shocked that she fainted right in the courtroom. This fact became important confirmation that until that moment, the victim had been completely isolated from any information about the suspect and the crime she had committed. This circumstance also played in favor of the prosecution. The lawyers, on the other hand, tried to draw attention to the blurriness of the surveillance camera footage and the sneaker print. They explained that the medical workers, while providing assistance to the victims, could have inadvertently destroyed valuable evidence by trampling the crime scene. In addition, one of the witnesses recognized Christine near the scene, confirming her presence near Emma's house. The victim herself also identified the attacker. Christine could not explain to the court for what purpose she had been making internet search queries about ways to conceal evidence. Similarly, the defendant did not provide comprehensible explanations as to why she needed photographs of Emma and her children, as well as a detailed plan of the house where Emma and Torgny lived. As is often the case in high-profile court proceedings, the final decision was delayed. The verdict had to be waited for until August 26. In the end, the panel of judges found Christine guilty on all counts. The punishment for her was life imprisonment without the right to parole. In addition, the court ordered the convicted woman to pay the mother of the murdered children compensation in the amount of 100,000 Swedish kronor, which is equivalent to approximately $10,000. Christine's defenders immediately tried to appeal the verdict, but their appeal was rejected. According to the court's decision, even if Christine is ever released, she will be immediately deported to Germany with a lifetime ban on entering Sweden. She became only the 7th woman in the history of Swedish justice to be sentenced to life imprisonment. In 2012, at the request of the German side, the prisoner was transferred to a women's correctional facility in the city of Vechta, Germany. Christine continues to periodically try to get the verdict overturned and a new trial appointed, insisting on her innocence. Meanwhile, Emma continues to struggle with the physical and psychological consequences of the injuries sustained during the attack. 4 years after the tragedy, she gave an interview in which she admitted that the main force that helps her keep going is the memory of her deceased children, as alive and smiling as they will forever remain in her heart. Torgny was there the whole time, supporting his beloved woman. Later they got married. The couple had 2 babies, who were told about the tragic fate of their brother and sister. Although the killer is behind bars, Emma still fears that Christine will not stop trying to get the case reviewed and, quite possibly, succeed. The woman does not rule out that in this case she may again become a target for a new attack by the deranged Christine, obsessed with the idea of revenge. I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Until next time, friends.